Okay, good morning, everybody. Zoom sending me new messages this morning after the update, so hopefully everyone can see us. I'm joined this morning by Zhenya Polosatova, and I'll introduce her in a minute. But first of all, a very warm welcome if you're watching, if this is your first time in the Hub. This is one of our Thursday webinars. We do a webinar every fortnight. And then we have other live events as well. So we alternate coffee breaks on a Thursday if you want to come along and chat and meet other members. And then we also have a live chat event on a Tuesday, and that varies each week. So keep an eye on the notifications for what's coming up. Next week, we have a monthly management meetup on a Tuesday. I'm a big fan of alliteration. Also, if you're not watching us live, but you're watching the webinar, the recording, feel free to leave us a little hashtag catch up, just so that we know who's around and who's watching and might say hello, might just like your post. So yeah, this morning I'm joined by Zhenya, and I mean, to be honest, this is the third time that I've seen Zhenya talk about this topic, and I learn so much every time. I learn something new every time. It makes me re-reflect on things as well. So it's really great to have you here with us, Zhenya. Zhenya is a teacher and a teacher trainer, and she's based in Ukraine. She's also quite a prolific blogger on her blog Wednesday Seminars, and I'll share a link to that in the chat as well. And she's hugely passionate about reflection, but not only kind of the theory behind it and why it's a good idea, but also about how to make it a part of our everyday teaching. So, and one other thing that I wanted to mention, she's got this fabulous mantra, her ELC mantra on her blog, which is inspired teachers, inspire learners, which I thought was lovely as well. So, Zhenya, lovely to have you with us. I'll hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Teresa, for the warmest introduction I could imagine. This is so cool. And honestly, it's been my dream to join the Hub from the other side, because I kept an eye on a lot of sessions and other wonderful events that are going on. So yeah, inspire teachers, inspire learners, inspire trainers, inspire teachers to inspire learners, and that pyramid can grow. And as Teresa mentioned, that's the third session. And I'm so grateful that you've been joining the other ones, because that kind of makes sense to how I structured this one. So they are slightly different every time, because at first we focused on attitude and appreciation of the skill of reflection. And actually all the links will be there shared on my blog. So if you wanted a catch up or a recording, that's there. So the second one was about the skill or the practice. And as you notice in the titles, it's kind of avoiding the theory part, sort of avoiding the heavy bit. So I thought that's the good time to fill in that gap today. And we'll be focusing on the knowledge part of it, but not in a boring way and not in a very academic way, because I'm not a researcher on the subject. I'm not a theoretician, so to say, but this is something I've been practicing as a teacher trainer with the World Learning SIT program. And I think that's something I really believe in. And I hope to inspire a little bit of this during the session. But my understanding is that you all come from very different contexts, and people who are watching us as well, like it's harder to know what you do, where you teach or don't teach, right? Manage a school or do teacher training. So here are a couple of questions just to see where we are in this topic and possibly why we are joining today. So I'll leave it here for a while, and I know there will be some comments hopefully coming on Facebook.
Yep, hopefully. I mean, obviously with the Facebook, there's always a bit of a lag, but yeah, do feel free to leave your comments and questions, and especially question 4, if you have any questions about reflective practice, Zhenya is the person to ask. So, I mean, Zhenya, I'm going to throw these questions back to you. How do you reflect on your experience and practice?
Yeah, I do. And that's something that kind of puts together different experiences in my career, because as mentioned, I do teacher training, I do a little bit of trainer coaching, or training new trainers, but I also had experience of teaching in the past with International House in Ukraine, and also do a little bit of writing, curriculum design. And sometimes I pilot different projects in ELT, and that all seems like disconnected in a way, but I think the reflective practice skill is a kind of link that helps make sense of it and make it logical, at least to myself, which I think it's not bad for a freelance professional. So, and blogging is one of the ways to do it. Thank you for the mention, Teresa. And I think conferences is one of those ways. That's how we met, right? In Barcelona, in the pre-COVID times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think when I first started blogging, I've said this before, but it was very much for me. But now, hopefully, I feel I've become a bit more reflective and a bit more analytical when I blog. So yeah, I think it's something, although it's something that's taught on pre-service qualifications, there's just so much to take in that actually, you know, something to come back to once you're actually a practicing teacher and have a bit more time to reflect.
Totally. And I think as you mentioned, pre-service qualification, there is so much thrown at people at that stage, and it's very hard to take all the depth that's possible. And obviously, as we develop in teaching, right, like it's a different person, different professional in 3 or 5 years from the starting point. And
yeah,
and I think reflection can really make us into autonomous professionals, thinkers, and then it of course gets back to like being with students and helping them to be autonomous and reflective, critical.
There's been a really lovely message from Rachel talking about, you know, how we can make this a practical thing. She says she records her classes and then reads the transcript as a way of focusing on her teacher talk, which I think is, you know, such an important aspect. And Simon said adding a framework to reflective practice is so important. So he's looking forward to knowing more about that during the session.
This is wonderful, Simon. Thank you, because that's the bridge to what we're going to talk about today. This is so cool. Okay, and these questions, we'll get back to them later on, but I think, I hope some of them will be answered, and I really hope that there will be new ones as a result of our chat. Okay, so a brief history, or like not the history, but the guide into ways how reflective frameworks were developing. And this is a picture from the south of Ukraine. The town is called Berdiansk. And at least in our language, and I think in some other cultures and languages, there is an idea that if you step on the rake, right, it will bump you on the head. So yeah, it's a kind of encouragement to do some reflection on the mistakes. But some cultures keep making the same mistakes over and over. So we even have a monument. And I just wanted to say that kind of learning from experience is not something recent. It's something that historically humankind was doing and is doing. And that's far beyond the area of the ELT or teaching as such, etc. So that's just a light start to what we're going to talk about. But more recent and more well-known scientists, and I'm sure you heard the names before. So the idea that we as humans can be very much learning from what we're experiencing. And again, this comes from philosophy, from adult education, far from the areas of the ELT. And what teachers and trainers and ELT professionals did, they were adapting this approach actively to the reflective teaching, sort of to learning from how we teach and from the interactive process. So because Teresa attended the 2 previous sessions, and there may be some people who are watching that who also saw my little recordings before, and I was sharing a little bit of my own experience, which I thought, let's move us away from the classroom. And let's think about something else that we are learning as teachers, as humans, because that's also our life. And because it's summer, because it's pandemic, and because I like running, that's the part that I chose. So last time it was June, and I was talking about my dream to run a trail race, which is still my dream, and the race is still coming mid-August in exactly 1 month. And I was sharing, and that's the picture in the top right corner, how I'm learning in a group with other beginner runners, how I'm experiencing and discovering things like running down the hill. And I thought that's a wow, that's a huge learning for me at that time. And you can watch the recording where I'm talking about on and on. So a quick note, I'm not a professional runner. I'm not proud of my results, and I'm not going to share them here. But anyway, we talk about the process. So between this last session and today, I had a test run, a test trail run. Why test? Because it was in the city. So you can see the one, Lviv Ultra Trail. Ultra part is not about me. I only did 11K. And it was an important day for me, and it was a big failure, I think. And as we know, reflecting on failure is such a useful experience. So that's probably what I can do a little bit. So the failure part was that at some point of the race, I lost the track. And I realized at some point that I actually cut off about like half a kilometer of the race, which is quite a bit if we talk about 11K. Yeah, so that was something really shocking for me. And that was something I kept thinking during the time of running. And I was so worried that I would be either disqualified or something happens. My biggest worry, though, was that if I come quite early, I may be one of the winners, you know what I mean? And that would be even more embarrassing than sharing this at a live Facebook session. So that was it. And the route was marked. You can see little flags, and you can see the little orange ribbon. And you probably can't see it very well. And I couldn't either, because there were like sometimes the branches were broken. Sometimes it was just strong wind. There was a hurricane before. Anyway, so I lost it, and I realized that I'm following 3 other girls who run very confidently. And of course, I was doing it for the first time. And that was just a disastrous feeling all the way around. And I started reflecting about that and thinking that, look, Zhenya, you've downloaded the map, right? You have it on your phone. So why didn't you look at the map? And it was completely out of my experience and habit, as usually if you run a race in the city, you cannot get lost. It's so clear, it's in the streets, it's just there. I didn't think about being lost. I didn't even kind of consider that situation. So I should have had some strategies for those. And I think my preparation, I think I only thought about being physically fit, doing a lot of exercises and all this stuff. But I think with trails, that was my big aha. You need to be prepared on a different level. And knowing the route is very different from knowing the city route. So that's what I think my learning will be for the future. So if you are like Teresa and you're watching the 3rd session in the series, you've recognized the experiential learning cycle and the 4 stages when we sort of recall it first and try to describe it. And the paradox is, by the way, that I didn't take a single picture during this time. So there was no chance to even find that right place where I got the route. But I'm going to reflect on that further. And then we are trying to analyze it, trying to interpret it from different ways, including possible reasons for what was happening. Then we make conceptualization or little learning, a conclusion for ourselves, and then plans for the future. So can you signal in the comments how okay this is, the explanation for you? Do you have any burning questions? And I'll pause.
Just whilst people are commenting, there was a lovely message. Those failure moments are actually opportunities to grow and learn if we take the time and effort to reflect. So I think you're right, often we can so easily get into a kind of a hole of, oh, this was terrible and this went wrong and this went wrong and this went wrong, rather than really reflecting on how we can do things differently next time.
Totally agree. It may not be the most pleasant sort of experience or comfortable part to be in, right? But definitely it. So we'll take this experiential learning cycle as a kind of basic form, basic model for reflection. And
there is there's a question about abstract conceptualization. So I guess you're going to go on to that now.
Yes, it's excellent to have little prompts and to make logical connections with that. Yes, so a bit of explanation at a bit more teacher-friendly language, because that was obviously not for, that comes from philosophy. So in the descriptions, we stay on the specifics, on this as objective as it's possible. Like in my case, it was kind of Zhenya's looking back, but I tried. But in the second one, interpretation, it's our opinion, our response, our thoughts, possible reasons, considerations, like looking at this experience from different side, from the distance. Now that it's been about 2.5 weeks, I have a better understanding and more objectivity. And the interesting part is the generalization, or our little learning a summary. Like out of a lot of things I've told you in this stage of opinion and reflective analysis, interpretation, my learning is that a planning for trail runs needs to be at a different level. So that's my hugest aha from that. And I even contacted the coach of our group and complained that, look, I'm a failure, like I failed the trail run. And he said something really important. He just said that that's why I told you to do a city trail, to try it out, because that's what your preparation is. And getting lost is a part of normality in trail runs. Well, that's something to, well, people if they don't do it on purpose, that's kind of okay. But that I think is something for me to learn more about. And then planning actions is something concrete that I'm going to do in my next trail run. And in my case, in this particular example, that's the 14th of August. It's a very specific date. So yes, fingers crossed. So that's something that can be used for reflecting on teaching experiences, training experiences, other kind of experiences. But of course, it can be a tool for thinking about life. Are there any other questions to pause here?
No, nobody's come through. So I'm just to get it into my head as well. So first, your reflective observations is very much about you, and then the abstract conceptualization is general idea behind what the problem was.
Actually, if we look at the, let's say, classroom experience, that may be easier. If I'm talking about my specific lesson, right, like a speaking lesson about my home city, and I'm describing my production or like communicative activity, I'm describing what the students were doing in pairs and what my instruction was. That's the description. I can be interpreting it from different lenses, but mainly for the objective or lesson aim of that lesson, like how was it useful, did it help student learning? Did it help everyone's student learning? Like, what did I observe? What is my evidence? Like, I'm getting back to the description and I'm also connecting it to what I'm seeing and observing. But then generalizations could be something that is true for other speaking lessons at this level of students. So that's my little conclusion that specific prompts on the whiteboard can be very helpful with A1 level of learners. My examples are quite primitive at this point and not in depth. It's just because we are clarifying the cycle, right? Like
that's often better, kind of taking it down to a very simple level. It makes it so much easier to understand as well, which is great.
And I think that's what happens in a training course, because people first choose very safe examples to look at, something about my visuals or my slides or my whiteboard or like other little things. And then once they get confident with the model itself, then they choose more significant moments to look at, like slices. And well, in combination with getting to know the group better, they feel more comfortable to be more vulnerable, right? Like, yeah. So that's one way, and I think it's well, there are opinions about it, but I think it's quite an efficient way because it has a lot of ideas taken into consideration. But because it comes from the 80s, like that this one was adapted in from Kolb 1984, but then later by trainers at SIT World Learning in 90s. So some other models also exist. Shall we move on?
Yeah.
Okay. I think the audience in Europe is more familiar with Graham Gibbs' reflective cycle from the book called Learning by Doing. And I think I'm glad we paused in the previous model for a little bit, because I think you will see the connections and you will see the additions, so to say, right? Like you can see that there are 6 stages, and you can see that it again starts with a description. But then we have 3 different things, or even 4. We have feelings, evaluation, analysis, and conclusion. And the question of feelings is generally a very big one, feelings and emotions. And I was reading an article by Jason Anderson recently, and he's considering 2 main categories, like reflections through rational thought and kind of intellectual cognitive level. And then that's the one that we've just discussed, like John Dewey and other models of the cycles based on that. And also Donald Schoen's idea of being more intuitive practitioner. And that's like reflection in action. You probably heard those parts. So in that sense, feelings and emotions are a little bit more welcomed to the cycle, inside the cycle. So plus, of course, the emotional intelligence question or theme has been very large recently, right? Very popular. And we've all been learning, I think, like acknowledging our feeling, being aware of how emotion impacts the process. And I think for teachers, it's very important, because we, as Parker Palmer said, we teach who we are, and it's very hard to separate our style of work from what we believe is important. So evaluation is more like, did it work, did it not work? Like, was it helpful, was it not? Analysis is closer to what we talked about, like interpreting the experience, making sense of it, making a conclusion for the future action. That's how, again, it connects and bridges the experience with what is going to happen in the future. Yeah, so that's another model. And I hope you notice that it's not it's not denying the previous one either. Like it's kind of building on it, and the same micro skills or reflective skills are being practiced. So I think that's the last kind of cycle that I'm using today, and basically you may find more in the literature, because I'm aware that there are like 3-stage cycles. There are cycles that use different kind of terminology, but oftentimes it falls into these basic sub-skills of separating description or objectivity from our interpretation and points of views.
I think that's really interesting as well, talking about the feelings, because when we do the CERT TESOL teacher training, they do immediate reflection, which is bullet points, and then they reflect later again more deeply. And it's, you know, often when you reflect has a lot of impact as to what you see, how you interpret it, and kind of the action plan that you decide as well.
Totally agree. And sometimes what you choose to reflect on really is impacted by the feelings. Like if it was an online class and something didn't work technically, like you couldn't find you couldn't share the screen, that feeling is so strong, or can be so strong, that it colors the whole reflection. But maybe thinking about that in the morning, you would think, oh, that's okay. That was the 3 minutes and I had a plan B. So there isn't anything to worry about or to dig deeper, but yeah, but there may be some other things that you'd like to kind of discover. Yeah.
And
so
also maybe kind of the point of view that you reflect from. So for you, that moment of the tech not working was kind of end of the world moment, but your learners might not have even really noticed that anything was wrong sometimes, depending on the situation. So yeah, interesting to look at it from, or imagine looking at it from different points of view as well.
And I think it's also to add to that, if it's a training course, you also thinking about the observers and the trainer or tutor, not only of the impact on your students. And you think, okay, if they didn't notice, that's half of the problem, but my tutor, my colleagues might have noticed my embarrassment rather than something, like it's so multi-layered. It's really very interesting. And I think that's where this kind of separation or like exercise helps, when you actually separate my feelings and my thoughts from my actual actions or words. And recording tools are very useful here. And I think in the online era, it's really easy to do, right? You can actually check how many seconds did it take, or like, is it worth a conversation? So those kind of things. And sometimes sometimes actually the experiential learning cycle itself is criticized for being so rational and not acknowledging the feelings at all. So because they are kind of outside the cycle. And there could be, again, different points of view to that. From my experience of working in different cultures, in different contexts, running a course, there are cultures where acknowledging feelings in public is just less acceptable at a cultural level. So when they are asked, how do you feel? The answer would be very formal in English, something like fine, or that's okay. And okay, let's move on to the serious part of the work. So sometimes a course doesn't have any space for that kind of depth of, what do you do if real emotions come up as a trainer? Do you have time to deal with that? Do you have energy and space and all of that? So I think it's a huge topic.
Talking about tools that people use, Simon says that he often gives 1 to 10 score for each class over a day, and then take an average. Because sometimes as well, that one bad class or that one bad moment in one class can really stick in your head. But then when you look at it over the period of the day, it was actually a good day. So he said it's not very, it's all very unscientific, but it's helpful.
No, that's a personal science, and I really love it. I just imagine that the same could be quickly done in a lesson plan form for the initial reflection. And if it's just one thing that didn't really work or feel good, then congratulations, the lesson was quite strong, right? The objective was achieved and all of that. That's excellent. I think reflective practice invites this personal creativity in terms of how to look back at things. Yeah, I love it. Right, okay. Shall we move on? Yeah, let's see. Another big name in our industry, I'm sure you know, Thomas Farrell, and he's very generous on his website, sharing a lot of chapters from his book and articles, and it's a Reflective Inquiry website. So the latest book that I've been reading is called Reflection as Action in ELT. And the 5 little boxes here, as you see, it's not a cycle, but these are big areas that he focuses on in terms of teacher reflection. And his main point here is that teacher identity, teacher personality needs to be really looked at more closely, maybe with the same attention as the choices that we do, that we make in the classroom, because who we are impacts what we teach and what kind of decisions we make. So that's if we again compare with the cycle and the reflective skills, you notice that the part about philosophy, principles, theory, and beyond practice, that's all like at that generalization level of exploring beliefs, thinking about why, where does this come from, what's my value behind it. And I think it's a fantastic approach. So in the book, each of these is a separate chapter. And I highly recommend if you have a chance to take a look. And if not, I think the website is an amazing place for different ideas and resources. So that's another way to look at. And one of the principles of reflection that he shares in his other books is called dialogic reflection, reflection as a dialogue. And that falls into the idea that you can, of course, reflect on your own, but having someone to talk to can definitely make the interpretation much richer, because you can simply hear one more point of view or more. And together you can come up with very interesting generalizations or insights that would be very different from your own solo kind of reflection. But that's not a model, but a format. And we'll talk about that too.
Is that what you did before when you had your reflective group?
Yeah, reflective group is one of the ways, and I think Thomas Farrell is someone who really advocates for such groups, and he writes about them. He says he encourages teachers to meet and talk about their teaching, talk about their philosophy, principles, about why they do things in the classroom. And yeah, that's, if we have time, I can share more about that. But I think I have a feeling that could be a whole session topic, because that's quite something. When teachers meet to reflect, not to learn new activities, but to practice reflection. Yeah.
But I mean, actually, like in that process, you will learn so much from your peers. Like you'll pick up new ideas just because in the process of explaining what they did in their class, although the objective is to reflect on it, you'll go, oh, I'm going to steal that idea for my own lessons too.
Mm-hmm. I think these kind of meetings, they don't exclude exchange of resources and ideas. There could be a conversation. Like I attended this fantastic webinar, the TEFL Development Hub, and I tried it with my students, and look what I have. And now I have added this little element, and someone says, "Oh, let me try that with my students." So that's that kind of level. So you can feel that I'm also biased towards reflective practice groups. Yeah.
No, it's good. It's a good idea. There's been a couple of more interesting ideas. So some people talk about choosing one focus for the lesson to kind of reflect on in action and then after action. And then someone else mentioned having a different focus at different points. So, it might be with this activity, I want to look at my instructions, whereas when I'm giving feedback, I want to think about my gestures or something like that. So that was quite interesting. And somebody else mentioned having on their lesson plan, either making notes as they go through, just kind of jotting side notes, or actually having a specific place on the plan to kind of reflect on that.
Yeah, those are strategies and ways, and definitely yes. The lens for reflection can be so interesting. Like you can decide which point of view to look at from. And as I think Rachel mentioned it at the beginning about recording yourself and then checking the teacher talk. And we remember Steve Walsh, Steve Mann book and articles, about different examples. Like you can focus on specific teacher questions. And there is a fantastic way to categorize what kind of questions you tend to be asking and at which stages of the lesson, and then maybe record and transcribe bits of your explanation times. Lots of ways. I think the key here is to understand that yes, I'm doing that because I'm collecting the data or the information for the fruitful description, for making it objective, so that my interpretation or analysis could be deeper. And then I could have more than one insight from one little experience. Definitely. So in a way, it's like an endless process. It's very easy to get lost, like I did on the trail run.
I like that analogy.
That's
There's been a question about Farrell's reflective cycle, the difference between philosophy, principles, and theory.
I think I would not sort of try to make a quick explanation here, because I think principles are those that make our beliefs or our decisions, but philosophy is something larger, and that's how it's the earlier chapter in his book. So I wanted to offer this as a sort of as an example of a different way, just not for us not to get stuck in the cycles only. That's how.
Excellent. And Rachel's also recommended another book by Farrell, Reflective Practice in ESL Teacher Development Groups, and a Handbook of Reflection by Moon. So we've got lots of reading resources. I'll add links to if I can find them.
Yeah, I'd love to read the second one, because I don't think I have. And I think Thomas Farrell would be a great person to read about reflective groups. That's a great idea. All right. So shall we, move on a bit? Okay. So this part is not a cycle again, and this is not even a process taken from teaching. It's from the artistic world, and the website here, like it again gives much more explanation to the idea. But my image is not accurate here because the picture must be unfinished. So the artistic project shouldn't be finished. It's kind of hard to find that sort of illustration, but you can imagine what we're talking about. It's like our practice teaching, but a conversation of fellow artists, and they are discussing the product as we are discussing the lesson. So we have suggestions for different roles that people could make in that conversation. So the maker would be the person whose product we talk about, whose piece of art. The facilitator is like, I don't know, teacher, trainer, or the person who is leading the discussion, and responders can be any people who look at the work. And the suggested stages of this conversation, or the process for this kind of conversations, are here on the left. Like the statement of meaning is basically what people share about the picture. And I think you can see how it reminds a little bit the descriptions, the part where we are just saying objective. And then artist asks questions. Does it remind us a little bit of the procedure for feedback, right? Like the teacher speaks first, and then the neutral questions from the responders are there. And I'd recommend like digging more about what kind of questions are neutral questions without this kind of, don't you think that pair work is better here? That kind of little, not a question type. And opinion time. So again, it's an invitation from a very different field, different from us, to look at this process of reflection from a different angle. And I find it quite inspiring to realize that it's not just teachers who have to go through this rigorous process, but this process of co-creation can be quite helpful and constructive for the future. And I think for people who are responding, as well as people who are the makers of this particular part. So that's another resource to look at, and could be quite useful at a training course.
I think as well, it's nice to take it from a different angle, you know, because we do talk about reflection a lot on teacher training courses, or getting feedback and things. But it's something that we do, it's part of life as well. Like if you're cooking a meal, you get feedback from the people that eat it. You know, it's not such a structured process, but feedback and reflection, it's something that we're doing all the time in our daily lives anyway.
True. And something that's not in the resources list, but I just recalled, is like the piece of advice to coach your boss in a way, like, or maybe your supervisor, basically being open for feedback and searching that kind of feedback. And sometimes if it doesn't come your way, then asking questions that can be prompting some kind of response. So that's again like an alternative point of view at the possible reflective process. Again, this obviously works in a group. I don't think I can imagine how the same person could be changing hats and being like in a different role. Maybe.
Yeah, it's tricky sometimes as well, isn't it, to change our hats and put ourselves in other people's shoes. Or I liked your point as well about the sorts of questions that we ask, and are we actually asking the right questions by saying, don't you think this is better? It's not really a question at all.
We sometimes call it hidden suggestion or suggestion under disguise or something like that. Yes, there can be. Well, but I think we've all been at feedback sessions like that, and we may be aware. Okay, to give us a little break from reflective models, that's intentionally blank part, and my intention is to say that sometimes you don't need a form to reflect. You don't need a model, especially if you know a couple of them and you understand like the basic sub-skills of reflection. You may actually start from what's brightest for you, what's most like burning for you right now. And sometimes it's the feelings, and sometimes it's, oh, but I read so much about this and this, how it should work, but it was completely opposite in my classroom, you know, like all those kind of things. And sometimes just free writing or not reflecting even can be a decision. So that's another option.
And I mean, sometimes as well, depending on what you're reflecting on, if you're following a form or a structure, it can be a bit too restrictive at times, perhaps. So like you say, free writing and just putting all your thoughts down on paper as a stream of consciousness, and not necessarily trying to categorize things into feelings or analysis, that can be a part of the process as well.
It can be very hard to describe objectively if your feelings are like emotions are strong. So you can later just take a different color of marker and underline all the feelings that were inside and kind of analyze that part and why you were feeling this way. And do you still have this feeling like 3 days later? Something. Being creative with this, I think, is part of the reflective process.
We were asked to do it as well one time, reflecting on our tutoring and looking at the comments that we gave in feedback to underline whether they were talking about the teacher's presence, but like the affect in the class, or whether it was about the skills, the classroom management skills. And that was a really interesting process as well, you know, to see how brightly colored different people's papers were. So yeah, it's good for us to reflect on our tutoring as well.
Yeah, and yeah, in the courses where I'm training and trainer training, that's one of the basic skills to teach in terms of observation and feedback language, like to be sure that the way we give feedback is also based on the cycle, like that description is clearly separated from non-description, and the questions we ask are helping participants reflect, but not like hiding our direct suggestions. Or if it is a suggestion, then we don't make a question out of it. So like those things at a trainer level, yeah, I think it's again fundamental for that.
Okay. Oh, I had a really nice comment coming from Rachel as well. I think that cycles and systems are there to guide us when we are new to reflection. The more we practice reflection, the more we start finding our own different ways.
Yes, plus some models are very open. Like I find personally that the reflection, the experiential learning cycle doesn't really restrict because it has such a huge depth in terms of interpreting it, and different lenses, different importance of that, to me at some point can lead to different, so not all models are restrictive. I thought to say that the experiential learning cycle can be like PPP for the teacher training, but no, I think PPP is quite restrictive if we talk about that. Yes. Okay, I think I'm taking the time and I'd really wanted to share this because I think we're already touching the questions a little bit. Just like the summary or the bottom line of that, like if we understand the basic reflective skills, and that are largely, to me, again, it's very subjective summary, but separation from subjectivity and objectivity and making meaning out of the experience that we had, and then planning future actions, we can use a variety of models. That's what I think what Rachel says, like in a different way that works for us. And we can do that in a variety of ways, formats, using different tools, and being quite creative with that. Sometimes I find that this is being mixed. Like I think sometimes people say, but reflection can be a dialogue. Yes, and it can be a dialogue with the help of a structure, and that could make it very productive. But it can also be a dialogue that's like stuck in one of the stages and doesn't lead anywhere. Like we can very comfortably share our feelings and complain about some like bad students and all of that, but that doesn't sort of solve anything, and that's what I wouldn't call reflection. So that's why I kind of tried to summarize how I see it, and I'd be very interested in having your opinion about this. Does it make sense?
There's just so many fantastic ideas here, and you know, things that you might not necessarily think about, like a mind map. You know, finding different ways to organize your ideas as well. Is a lovely idea. Yeah, I'm going, oh, I want to do that, and I want to do that, and I want to try that.
I really love the notes that you're making after the webinar, Teresa. So that's why I thought that's like sketchnoting can be definitely here, and it's not here now. Yeah, there are a lot of ways how to, you know, that if you record, for example, your lessons or sessions, by the way, is recording here at all? Okay, just voice messages, but obviously there could be recording of the whole lesson, which is very easy. The reflection part would be when you start listening, just 1 minute or 2 minutes of that. It can be done really randomly. It doesn't have to be the whole lesson. People don't have physically that much time, but maybe just if you do it once a month and listen to how you're asking questions to students, that would be the progress that you'd notice. So, and I know we already talked about online meetups and reflective groups, but I think that the hub, the way you organize it with Simon, is a fantastic example of creating this community for reflection and inviting. I think when people, especially when there are closed events like on Zoom and you have people who are attendees like on a more regular basis, you can have quite productive and in-depth conversations. It may be harder if it's a public and live event. That's why I did the trail run, but not something more serious, not about the worst presentation I had or something like that. But yeah.
I think it's interesting, like what you talked about before as well, about how your reflective process changes perhaps as you get more familiar with the students and things, but as well, like during a cert TESOL or any type of course where you're reflecting with other people, you do get more comfortable, you open yourself up a bit more as well, I think, once you know the people better.
Yeah, and that's where dialogic and the social aspect of it really plays a huge role. And I think reflective practice groups, they don't have to be huge. They can be like 4 or 5 people, but people who are equally open to reflection and who are not sort of expecting any input, and are not offering you criticism just suddenly, especially when not being asked and all of that. So I think that's the magic of it. Okay, so just wanted to share this slide as a sort of what's been on my mind recently in terms of reflection. So back to our questions. How are you doing as a result of this? And yeah, I'm throwing it to people who are either like watching now live or maybe in the future watching the recording. If you want to get connected, it would be cool.
Yep, definitely. I think I like to find out more about Farrell. Simon's managed to find a couple of the books which Rachel mentioned as well. I mean, there's just so much reading, but it seems very easy to then put it into practice. It's just a case of taking the time and making the effort, as Michaela said, to reflect on our lessons or on our input sessions or whatever it is.
And sometimes that's another idea, by the way, for reflective meetings, when people share, like read the same chapter from the book and then come back and discuss. That's what we also did in one of the meetings, and that was quite interesting because, again, like we read and it's everyone's different experience.
Yep, that was another idea we had for the hub for the future, maybe of necessarily focused on reflection, but kind of a reading group where we would find an article and meet up a couple of weeks later to discuss it. And I think you're right, different narratives, different voices, different points of view, different interpretations. There's so much that you can learn from each other.
Yeah, like different ideas, different decisions made for the future. Maybe, oh, I like what you thought about that. Let me try that as well. True. Okay, so questions can be there on the slide, and a couple of links that I was talking and mentioning, and basically the book that I mostly recommend is The Art of Reflective Teaching by Carol Rogers. That's the recent book, and she was, as you remember, one of the people who worked on adaptation, the cold cycle for the ELT field, and yeah, so lots of amazing literature. There is often less time for theory of this kind because people are busy. So maybe having conversations about reflection, one way to promote it further. And I really like this expression, this concept from Jason Anderson, like reflection literacy. It's a fantastic way. And his recent presentation is really worth watching if there is a chance. So this link is to the slides, but then this time I wasn't so organized to make a blog post, but I will over the weekend, and we'll put all the links over there. But the posts about the previous two sessions are sitting on my blog, so if you're curious, be there. So borrowing a metaphor from Carol Rogers, that like reflection can be a snowball, and if you are inside, you can feel it, and if you are outside, you're holding the ball, you don't feel that storm, but you can learn from that a lot. So
lovely. Oh, I like that. Yeah. And I remember you posted this picture on Twitter the other day, and it's just such a beautiful image as well. Yeah, all the images that I found of reflection seem very calming, which is lovely. Excellent.
So I think that's it. That's it pretty much. Last slide.
That was fantastic. We haven't had any questions come in as yet, I don't think. But yep, if there are any questions in these last couple of minutes, throw them in the comments box. Zhenya's in the hub as well, so you can always tag her in a comment if you're watching on catch up, if you have any burning questions that you want to ask. But yeah, hopefully everybody's got some thoughts to go away with. Simon says, so good to have some space to focus on reflection, an essential skill to move us forward. Which I think is definitely true. Excellent. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Zhenya, for coming along today. It was a really interesting chat. I've again learned even more things that I now need to go away and reflect on. And yeah, it was just wonderful. yeah, makes me think I should be reading a lot more and then putting the theory into practice in a much more conscientious way.
Thank you so much, Teresa, Simon, for this, and people in the audience. That's really great to be in the reflective space for teachers, and I'm so grateful and appreciative.
Fantastic. Well, everyone have a lovely week. As I said before, we've got a monthly management meetup on Tuesday next week, and then we'll be back with the coffee breaks on Thursday. Bye-bye.